The letter arrived on a Thursday morning, tucked between a cable bill and a takeout flyer like it was nothing important. I recognized my mother's handwriting on the envelope before I even picked it up. The careful loop of the C in my name, the same loop she had pressed into birthday cards that were really meant for my sister. I set my coffee down, opened it slowly, and read it twice. We've decided to transfer ownership of Hartwell Events to your sister. We know you'll understand. You always do. I folded the letter back into its creases. Outside, the Chicago sky was the color of old dishwater. I placed the envelope on the counter beside my planner, smoothed it flat, and went to work. They mistook my calm for consent. What they didn't see was the client database already saved to my personal hard drive. The first time I understood that being useful and being valued were not the same thing. I was 11 years old. My mother had started Hartwell Events the year before, a small catering and event planning business run out of our house. She had the idea. My father had the enthusiasm. Neither of them had the follow-through. That fell to me. I was the one who answered the phone when vendors called back. I was the one who typed up the invoice templates on our old desktop computer because my mother's typing was too slow. I was the one who, at 11, had reorganized the client folders from a cardboard box into color-coded binders that my father called unnecessary. 6 months later, he couldn't find a contract without them. My sister Vanessa was 3 years younger and never interested in any of it. She was interested in being watched. She had the kind of face that made adults stop mid-sentence and compliment her, and she had learned early how to keep that attention moving in her direction. While I updated spreadsheets, she sat on the kitchen counter and made our parents laugh. While I drafted follow-up emails to clients, she showed my mother videos on her phone. When I turned in a school project that got displayed in the hallway showcase, my father said, "Nice work," and went back to asking Vanessa about her weekend. I didn't stop trying. That was the part I couldn't explain to anyone for a long time, why I kept going when the reward was always rerouted. I think I believed, the way children believe in the logic of fair things, that if I built enough, if I proved enough, eventually someone would turn around and say, "We see you." We always did. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I had turned Hartwell Events from a small catering side job into something real. We had 12 recurring corporate clients. We had a reputation with 3 downtown venues. I had built a system for every part of the business. Intake forms, event timelines, vendor contracts, post-event follow-ups. I had done it without a business degree, without formal training, and almost entirely without acknowledgement. My father called it helping out. My mother called me our backbone, knock on wood. Vanessa called me when she needed someone to cover her shift answering the inquiry line so she could go to a concert. Vanessa had joined the business at 23, not because she wanted to, but because 2 other jobs had not worked out. My parents absorbed her into Hartwell Events the way they absorbed all of her failures, gently, with softened edges and adjusted expectations. She handled social media, which mostly meant she posted photos of events that I had planned and staged. The comments called her talented. She never corrected them. My mother once told me, in the way she delivered certain truths, sideways, while doing something else, that Vanessa needed more support because she was more sensitive. I was stirring sauce on the stove when she said it. I didn't turn around. I just nodded and kept stirring, and she took that as agreement and moved on. I had a partner by then, a man named Owen who worked in logistics and understood systems the way I did. He was the first person who ever looked at my color-coded binders and said, "You built this, didn't you?" Not as a compliment exactly, more like a recognition. He saw the structure and understood what it meant, that someone had done a great deal of invisible work for a long time. He was the first person I told everything to, about the phones I had answered at 11, about the client I had kept from canceling by spending 3 hours on the phone with him the night my mother forgot to confirm a venue booking, about the year I had renegotiated every vendor contract and saved the business $11,000, and my father had said, "Good," and passed the compliment directly to Vanessa because she had been present when he said it. Owen listened without interrupting. Then he said, "You know that's not normal, right?" I said, "I know, but it's mine." He understood what I meant. The business was mine in the way that things become yours when you are the only one who truly cares for them, not on paper. not in any official capacity, but in the way that mattered. Every system, every client relationship, every carefully worded email that had kept a difficult account from walking, that was mine. Until the Thursday letter. Vanessa called the same evening. The letter arrived. Her voice had that brightness it always got when she had recently received something she hadn't earned. "Mom and Dad told you, right?" she said. "I got the letter," I said. "I know it's probably weird for you, but honestly, Clara, you've been doing so much. This way you can relax a little. Let me handle the big stuff." The big stuff. I had run the company for the better part of a decade, and she had managed a social media account that posted the wrong event photos twice in one quarter. "I think it's great," I said. There was a pause. She had expected more resistance, or more tears, or more of whatever she and my parents had prepared themselves to manage. "You're okay with it?" she asked. "I think it's a natural transition," I said. She laughed, relieved. "You're so mature about everything." "I always say that." I said goodbye and set the phone down on my kitchen table next to the letter. Owen was across the room watching me with the careful expression he used when he was waiting for me to process something before he spoke. I said, "I need about 2 weeks." He said, "Tell me what you need." The next morning, I woke before my alarm. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and began. I was not going to fight the transfer. There was no point. My parents' decision was made the way their decisions about Vanessa always were, fully, emotionally, with no aperture for revision. Arguing would cost me time and produce nothing but resentment that I would be expected to absorb. What I was going to do was something much quieter. I opened the client database. 12 active corporate accounts, 3 of which were the kind of long-term relationships that survived company mergers and budget cuts because they were built on personal trust, not just contracts. I had built each of those relationships by hand. I knew the assistant at Peridian Financial who handled the catering orders and always needed an extra vegan option. I knew that the event director at Callaway Group considered the room layout as important as the menu and needed to approve it personally. I knew that Mr. Vincent Harmon, the managing partner at Harmon & Lyle, our largest and most consistent client, had been with Hartwell Events since the 3rd year because I had personally flown to their satellite office to fix a vendor error at their annual partners' dinner when no one else would go. Mr. Harmon was the reason Hartwell Events had a downtown reputation at all. His referrals had brought in 4 of our other accounts. He was precise, loyal to competence, and had no patience for anything that wasted his time. I sent him an email that morning, not about the business transfer. Just a brief note asking if he had a few minutes for a coffee meeting in the next week. He replied within the hour. Thursday at 10. My office. Bring the Callaway files. I have a contact there who may need a referral. I printed the reply and placed it in a new folder. Over the following days, I moved carefully and without announcing anything. I compiled a personal record of every active vendor relationship, every negotiated rate, every internal note about client preferences that existed only in my head or in documents I had created. I reached out individually to the clients I had personal relationships with, not to say anything direct, but to check in, to confirm upcoming events, to be present and remembered. I began drafting the paperwork for a new business, provisional name, registered in my name, at my home address. Owen helped me structure the financials. A friend from my years in the industry connected me with a venue manager who's looking for a new planning partner. I also began quietly pulling back from the day-to-day at Hartwell Events. Not abruptly, just slowly, the way you remove one stone at a time from a wall to see if anyone notices the gap. I stopped updating the master vendor contact sheet. I stopped scheduling the quarterly client review calls that I had started 3 years ago. I stopped being the one who caught the errors before they became problems. Vanessa did not notice. Neither did my parents. My mother called midway through the 2nd week to tell me that Vanessa was doing wonderfully and that she had such a natural warmth with the clients. I asked if she had followed up with the Callaway event coordinator about the revised menu. My mother said she was sure Vanessa had handled it. She had not. I did not fix it. I made a note of it. The Thursday coffee with Mr. Harmon lasted an hour and 15 minutes. He had the kind of office that was organized the way mine was. Everything in its place. Nothing decorative that didn't serve a purpose. He poured coffee without asking how I took it, because he had known me long enough to know. I told him I was starting a new firm. I told him why, without excess detail or sentiment. I told him the name, the structure, and what I intended to bring to it. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How long have you been the one running Hartwell events?" "Since the beginning," I said. He nodded once, the nod of a man who has just confirmed a suspicion he had held for years. "I'll be honest with you. I've been loyal to Hartwell events because of you, not because of the name." "I know," I said. He almost smiled. "When are you launching?" I told him. He opened his calendar. The weeks that followed had a momentum that felt like something being corrected. I finalized the new business registration. I confirmed the venue partnership. I built out the intake system from scratch. Faster this time because I had done it before and I knew exactly where the gaps had been. Owen helped with the financials and the legal paperwork. 2 vendors I had worked with for years made it clear they would follow me when I asked. At Hartwell events, the gaps I had left were becoming visible. The Callaway menu error had escalated into a callback that Vanessa handled badly. One of the smaller clients had sent an inquiry that went unanswered for 4 days because no one had flagged it. My mother called me twice asking if I could pop in and help with a vendor negotiation. Both times I said I was busy with something personal. Both times she said she understood, and both times I heard in her voice that she did not quite believe the problem was real. I did not feel pleasure watching it. I want to be clear about that. What I felt was more like the absence of something I had been carrying for a long time, a weight so familiar I had stopped noticing it until it was gone. The event that mattered most was the Harmon and Lyle annual partners dinner. It was scheduled for the last Friday of the month, their biggest event of the year, 60 guests, seated dinner, 3-course menu, speeches, the kind of evening where every detail was visible and any failure was visible too. I had planned it for 4 consecutive years. Vanessa had told my mother she had it fully under control. She had secured the venue. That was the full extent of what she had done by the time I checked. Quietly, through a vendor contact who still copied me on communications out of habit. The florals had not been ordered. The audio-visual company had been confirmed for the wrong date. The menu had not been finalized with the kitchen. The seating chart, which Mr. Harmon reviewed personally every year, had not been drafted. 2 weeks before the event, I sent Mr. Harmon a separate email through my new business address. Our team would be glad to step in as backup coordinator for the partners' dinner if needed. We've worked the event before and can be fully operational in 48 hours. He replied the same day, "I was hoping you'd offer. How soon can we meet?" I met with him the following morning. Within the week, my new firm was formally contracted for the Harmon and Lyle partners' dinner. We worked without announcing it. The vendors I brought in were ones I had worked with before. They were professional and quiet. The florals were ordered. The audio-visual company was corrected and rescheduled. The kitchen received a finalized menu in time. The seating chart was drafted, reviewed, and approved. On the night of the event, I arrived at the venue early, the way I always did. The room was set the way it should be. Warm light, tables properly spaced, the kind of quiet that a room has when everything in it is exactly where it belongs. My team moved through the final checks without rushing. Vanessa arrived at 6:15. I saw her from across the room before she saw me, her expression already uncertain, scanning the space with the look of someone trying to determine whether what they were seeing was a problem or not. She had dressed for the event. She was holding a clipboard with 3 pages that I suspected were not organized in any useful way. She saw me. The color in her face changed in a way I recognized. Not anger exactly, more like the specific panic of someone who has just understood that a situation is much further along than they realized. She crossed the room. "What are you doing here?" "I'm coordinating the event," I said. "I'm coordinating the event. Mr. Harmon contracted my firm 2 weeks ago," I said. I sent the formal confirmation to his assistant. It went through the same channels as all the prior contracts. She looked at the room again. At the florist making a final adjustment to the centerpieces. At the AV tech running a sound check at the podium. At the kitchen staff moving through the side door with the precision of people who had been briefed correctly. "You did all of this?" she said. "My team did," I said. She looked at me with an expression I had seen on her face before, the one she wore when she realized she had miscalculated something and was trying to find the version of the story where it wasn't her fault. "Mom and Dad are not going to be happy about this," she said. "You're welcome to call them," I said. I moved to check in with the head of service and left her standing in the middle of the room with her clipboard. My parents arrived at 6:45. They had been invited as long-standing contacts of Harmon and Lyle. My father had done some early work with the firm through Hartwell Events, and the invitation was a courtesy that had continued over the years. I had known they would be there. I had planned accordingly, which meant I had simply continued doing my job and let the room speak for itself. My mother found me near the entrance. Her expression moved through several phases in a short amount of time. "You're working this event?" she said. "Yes," I said. "But Vanessa was not prepared to execute it," I said. "Mr. Harmon reached out. I was available." She looked at my father. He looked at me with the expression he used when he was recalculating something he thought he had already settled. "You could have told us," my mother said. "You told me Vanessa had it fully under control," I said. I kept my voice even. "I took you at your word. There was nothing she could say to that. We both knew what she had said, and we both knew what had nearly happened to the event, and we both knew what had nearly happened to the event, and we both knew which of those things was demonstrably true." Mr. Harmon entered at 7. He moved through the room the way he always did, unhurried, taking stock of the details with the efficiency of someone who had spent 30 years determining very quickly whether a thing had been done properly or not. He stopped at the seating chart, confirmed his placement, checked the menu card, then looked up and found me across the room. He crossed to where I stood. "Everything's right," he said. "It should be," I said. He glanced once in the direction of my parents and Vanessa, who were standing near the bar in a cluster that had the energy of a quiet argument in progress. "Your family," he said. It was not a question. "Yes?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, in the tone he used when he was making a point he intended to be heard, "I have worked with Hartwell Events for 6 years. In 6 years, I have never once needed to follow up on something twice." He paused. "I have been following up on things twice for the past 6 weeks. He said nothing else about it. He moved on to greet his arriving partners. But the room was not large, and the acoustics of its particular silence carried the way silence does, in rooms where people are paying attention. My mother had heard. My father had heard. Vanessa had heard. The dinner proceeded without incident. The food arrived on time. The speeches ran to their correct lengths. The audio worked. The florist had done something beautiful with the centerpieces, low enough that conversations could happen across the table, which Mr. Harmon always preferred and which I had specified in the brief. At some point during the second course, Vanessa left. I noticed the moment she did, the door closing in a way that was slightly too deliberate, slightly too controlled. My parents stayed through the dinner, sitting in the places they had been assigned, speaking quietly to the guests around them. My mother looked at me twice across the room. I met her eyes both times without flinching and then returned to my work. When the last guest had gone and the vendors were breaking down their equipment, Mr. Harmon stopped on his way out. He handed me an envelope. "That's the contract for next year's dinner," he said, "and the springboard reception in March." I thanked him. "You did the right thing," he said. "Not about the event, about all of it." The way he said it told me he understood the full shape of what had happened and had decided to say the one true thing about it. I drove home at midnight with the windows down. Chicago in the fall had a particular quality to its air, something cool and clarifying that arrived after dark. Owen was still awake when I got home. He had kept the kitchen light on, the way he always did. I set my bag down. He handed me a glass of water and didn't say anything, which was the exact right thing. After a while, I said, "Mr. Harmon gave us March too." Owen smiled. "I'll update the calendar." I sat down at the kitchen table. My planner was open to the month's schedule. I looked at the Harmon and Lyle entry, the one I had written in neat block letters 2 weeks ago when the contract came through. Beside it, in small print, I had written a second line, the name of my new firm. I thought about my parents driving home, about what the conversation in that car sounded like, about Vanessa, wherever she had gone after leaving the dinner, and what she was telling herself about the evening. I did not feel the satisfaction I had once imagined I would feel. What I felt instead was quieter than that, a stillness, like the moment after a long-held breath is finally released. My mother called the next morning. I let it go to voicemail. She said she thought we should talk. She said she hoped I wasn't angry. She said she and Dad were proud of me, and that they hoped I knew that. I listened to it once. Then I made a note to call her back in a few days when I had decided what I wanted to say and what I didn't. Owen brought coffee to the table. Outside, the city was doing its ordinary Saturday morning things. Delivery trucks, dogs being walked, someone opening the bakery downstairs, the smell of bread arriving through the window I had left cracked. I opened my planner to a fresh page, the new month. I wrote the firm name at the top, then the first confirmed event, then the second. Beneath those, in a column on the right, the names of the 3 clients who had followed me from the old business, not because I had asked them to, but because I had not needed to. Owen sat across from me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He knew I was. There are people who believe that the only way to correct an injustice is to announce it loudly, to make sure everyone in the room understands exactly who was wronged and by whom. I used to believe something like that too. I used to think that if I just said the right thing clearly enough, in the right moment, my parents would finally hear it. That if I just explained what I had built, they would see it. What I learned instead was that some corrections don't require words, they require evidence. They require the moment when a room is set perfectly and everyone in it can feel the difference, even if they can't name the reason. My parents had handed Hartwell events to Vanessa because they had spent 30 years not seeing me. That was the truth. And it was not something I could argue my way around. But what they had not considered, what they had never considered, was that what they were giving her was the name. What I was keeping was everything the name had ever meant. I did not need them to acknowledge that. The contracts on my kitchen table acknowledged it. The call from Meridian Financial the following week, asking if my new firm could take over their quarterly events, acknowledged it. The email from the Callaway event director, who had heard about the partners' dinner from a colleague and wanted to discuss terms, acknowledged it. The week after the partners' dinner, Vanessa posted on social media about Hartwell events, a photo of a past event I had planned, with a caption about her vision for the company's next chapter. The comments were full of encouragement. I scrolled past it without stopping. I had stopped needing her to understand the difference. There are families where one child is held up as the reflection of what the parents hope they look like, and another child is held down as the foundation that keeps everything from falling. I had been the foundation for a long time. I had done it without complaint because complaining had never produced anything but the instruction to be more understanding. What I had finally understood was that foundations don't have to stay where they're placed. The morning light in the kitchen was the particular gold that October makes in Chicago. Low and direct and honest. I closed my planner and set it beside the Harmon and Lyle contract and the new firm's incorporation papers, all 3 documents in a neat row on the table. Owen looked at them. Then he looked at me. "You ready for March?" he said. "March is already handled," I said. He nodded. I poured the last of the coffee and stood at the window. Below, the bakery owner had propped open his door. The bread smell was stronger now, warm and specific. Somewhere in the city, Hartwell Events was opening to its first Monday morning without me as its invisible engine. Somewhere my parents were deciding how to understand what had happened. I did not feel the need to help them understand it. That was new. The absence of that particular obligation, the one I had carried since I was 11 years old, folding my own report cards into drawers, was something I was still learning to recognize as freedom. The city moved below the window. The coffee was the right temperature. My planner was full of dates that belonged to me. I had not raised my voice once. I had not sent a single message designed to wound. I had simply stopped being small, and in doing so, I had taken up exactly as much space as I had always been entitled to. The room had rearranged itself accordingly. There is a particular silence that follows a long correction. It isn't empty. It isn't absence. It's the sound of things finally being where they're supposed to be, of a weight lifted, a ledger balanced, a door closed on something that no longer needs tending. That silence has a texture to it. It feels like the first morning in a long time when you wake up and the first thought isn't a task you're performing for someone else. I had worked for that silence my entire adult life without knowing that was what I was working for. Now I had it. I turned from the window. Owen was reading something. The papers on the table caught the morning light. The city went about its business below, indifferent and ordinary and exactly as it should be. I sat down, opened my planner, and began. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. New stories every week where the quietest moves turn out to be the most powerful ones.